Hi, welcome back. Today is day 5 of Card Week, so we're moving right along. Today I thought I would show you a technique with lots of repeated stamping. So you'll see on my work surface there, I've already adhered down the front of my card. And as it is right now, that card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but I will end up trimming that down. So what I started with is that stamp from Wildflower and Company that comes in the kit, and the stamp says hello there. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is cut off the part that says there because I want to do some repeated stamping all over the front of my card here. And rather than masking off every time I needed to stamp the hello sentiment, I just go ahead and trimmed off that there part. And if at any time I want to go back and stamp the sentiment hello there, it'll be real easy to just line that back up and use the stamp as it was intended. So I started with my repeated stamping here, and I'm using my Versamark ink pad, and I'm going to leave one spot open where I'm going to do some embossing. So you'll see as I stamp around on my card front that I'm going to alternate where I'm stamping. So sometimes I'm going to have the hello sticking off parts of the sides and the beginning or the end, just to add some variation on there. And also as I press the stamp pad down, then I clean all around my stamp press to make sure that any excess ink that got on the stamp press won't transfer to my card front. So I'm just going to continue covering the front of my card base. And I was a little concerned here about the ink that is on the washi tape transferring onto those little foam pads. And so I was moving around my stamp pad, and then you'll see me here kind of clean up around that washi tape just to make sure those stamp pads don't get ink on them. And I end up getting a little bit of ink on the area that I'm going to do my embossing. But because I'm going to do my embossing there, I wasn't that worried because I knew the embossing would end up covering that up. So here's where I'm checking, cleaning off the little edges of my stamp press. And now I'm going to go ahead and clean off the edges, and I'm going to bring my heat gun over and just apply a little bit of heat to that card front to make sure everything's completely dry before I go ahead and do my embossing. If any of that ink is still wet when I go ahead and try to do my embossing, then I'll have embossing paste sticking where I don't want it to stick. So I'm just going to make sure that's all nice and dry. And then I'm going to do my embossing sentiment right in the middle there. So after I double check and see that's all dry, I see that the stamp press left a little mark on my white area. So I'm just taking a little bit of an adhesive remover and a straight knife, just scraping off the top layer of that card front and then smoothing it back out, and nobody will be able to tell. So I'm taking my magic powder bag and I'm prepping that surface. And right before I'm about to use my Versamark, I see a little bit, my Versamark, I see a little bit of the black ink still left on my stamp. So I just clean that off again, make sure it's nice and clean, and then I go in and with my sticky ink, and I will stamp the sentiment right in that open spot. I'm taking my Ranger embossing powder in platinum, and I'm going to go ahead and emboss that sentiment in that spot on the card. So again, heating up my heat gun, making sure it's nice and hot before I bring it to my card base. And then as soon as that embossing powder starts to melt, I am all set. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my Distress ink and I'm going to color in that embossed hello. So again, with some washi tape, I'm just going to adhere that down to my mat. It isn't necessary, but I like doing that sometimes just to make sure that it's not moving around as I'm trying to work. So I have a little paintbrush that has the water inside of it, and I'm going to go ahead and use that along with 5 colors of Distress ink. The same colors that I used in my previous video. That's picked raspberry that I'm going to go ahead and start with, and that's going to go inside of the H. So I'm just going to smush that stamp pad down on some packaging and then pick the color up with my water brush. And I have a paper towel close by just to make sure none of that color goes outside of my embossing. So I'm just touching the paintbrush to the picked raspberry, pulling it in, painting on inside my H, and then drying off. Next for the E, I'm going to use Wild Honey. So just painting right inside that E. And pulling up all the ink and then filling it in. Next for my first L, I'm going to use the Distress ink Peacock Feathers. So pulling that down in the first L. And most of the embossing will keep the color in, but I just liked to be extra careful by keeping that paper towel close by. The next L is Chipped Sapphire. And for the O, I'm going to go ahead and use some tumbled glass. Now, as I put the tumbled glass inside that O, I did feel like it looked a little bit too similar to the peacock feathers. So you'll see me go over it a bunch of times to water it out a little bit and pull a little bit of that tumbled glass color up, just to lighten up the color so you could see some distinction between the first L and that O. So now that I have the Hello embossing all colored in with my Distress ink, I'm going to start assembling my card. So I was looking for a background, so I'm going to flip through the 6x6 pad and just see what background I want to go with for my card. So I pull out that striped paper, and that striped paper actually doesn't end up making it onto the card, but I think that striped paper would have looked great too. I just ended up going in a little bit different direction. So I trimmed around the edges of that card, so now it is just slightly smaller than a standard size card. And I wanted to mat my stamping, so I adhered that down to some black cardstock and then trimmed off the edges. So making that nice thin black border around there. And I was just checking the measurements on there, seeing what the measurements of the card were now that I had added that matting, and then cut down my striped paper. So here is where then I need to find my card base. So I pull out some cardstock that comes in the kit, and I'm looking at that, and I really liked the look of that pink embossing cardstock. It has little circles of embossing on it, so I thought that would look good. I also pulled out some buttons that came in the kit just to see what embellishments I wanted to use on the card, because I thought that would affect what color base I used. So I end up liking the pink for my card base, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that down. Now the base of the card does end up being a standard size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I'm going to trim that down and score and use my bone folder just to make a nice crisp edge. And I'm going to pop up all that stamping that I did. So I'm using my sticky thumb adhesive, and I'm going to adhere that to the back of, or the front of my card base. So that's going to go ahead and go down, and then I'm going to pull out those buttons again and find some embellishments to go on the front of that card. So you'll see me pull out the button and another little tag there that says Splendid, and I was just trying to decide which one I liked better, and I ended up liking that little mustard colored flower and the little turquoise button, and I'm going to layer those on top of each other and add some twine that also came in the kit. And I'm just going to take that twine and weave it through the buttonholes, tie a knot, and then add some adhesive to the back of that and press that on top of that mustard colored flower. And then that's going to go in the lower right hand corner of that card by the hello. So that is going to complete the card for day 5. If you have any questions, just leave a comment below. Thank you to all those who are watching the videos and giving them a thumbs up and liking them. I truly appreciate every single view and every single thumbs up, and I am so thankful for all your support. So I'll leave all the links down to the previous days of card days, and if you have any questions, just leave a comment below. Stay tuned at the end for some still photos. Thanks so much and have a fabulous day. Bye-bye.